Final Stop Brazil. Chapter 42. Michael's Happiness. A Dream Destroyed. This was the time when I decided to put something back on its feet by myself. I bought a new computer, had a programmer come who installed and programmed everything how I wanted it to establish a database for foreigners in Spain, or for foreigners who planned to come and live in Spain. Them I would help in case of labor, housing, bureaucracy, translation, etc. Chris smiled at all my activities at first, but I explained this was a market gap and that we were able to earn much money. I had the firm intention to bring Chris on the right path. Together with me, he could still turn the tables, I believed. I started with a database, filling it with job offers and employment requests. This meant for me a lot of driving and running around because I did everything alone: the advertising, distributing my specially designed business cards, and conversations with clients. For inclusion in my database, I asked for €5. For a successful placement and other successful support, I invoiced €50 from each party of contract, etc. Inquiry or orders from abroad, I charged double fees, and there were many requests, especially from Great Britain. My database was becoming full, and my wallet too. I didn't really have any costs. The only ones were actually telephone, fax, and internet fees. As long as my company was not officially fiscally registered, and who registered in Spain anything official, I paid no taxes. The work was very much fun for me because I had contact with many different people, and my success rate was impressive. I found an Irish chef for a Serbian restaurant looking for a cook. For a Finn woman, I found an appropriate apartment. For a Spanish couple with small children, I contracted a babysitter, and. My designed wanted posts I created using PowerPoint certainly caught attention, and this was my success. I was completely happy with this work, even if I worked my heels off during the day and at night took care of the paperwork. To relax in between, I checked my emails and remained so in touch with my friends. Cesar wrote to me often and always reminded me we still shall go on holidays together. My father called me one day and announced, to my completely surprise, that my parents were coming to visit us. "Next week we are there. We have already booked." My jaw dropped. "And where to exactly have you booked?" I asked cautiously. Chris was sitting opposite me, understood not a word, but looked anxiously on the basis of my visual expression. "Well, to Mallorca. That's with you in Spain, right?" It seemed as if I was now making a very stupid face, because Chris started to laugh. "You know, Spain is quite large, and we are at the bottom of the south. Mallorca is practically at the other end. It is a Balearic island. By car it would be, included ferry, about 12 hours drive," I explained patiently to my father, but had to bite my lower lip not to break out in laughter. Half disappointed, half surprised, my father asked, "What now? Spain is this big?" With a tinge of anger in his voice, he added, "Well, the mother has done the booking. She thinks Mallorca is all of Spain. Wait, I'll give her to you." And hey, presto, I found myself confronted with my mother. "But is Mallorca not nearby your place?" "No, it is not. And I wonder if you seriously planned to come here. Why didn't you say anything before?" "Can't you come to Mallorca then?" came one last hopeful attempt of her. "No, we can't. I have no time to wobble to Mallorca." Thus the conversation was as good as finished. I could visualize at the other end a very heated argument ensuing. Chris and I broke into laughter when I explained to him what this phone call was all about. Actually, I was quite happy this destiny passed me by, because I was totally busy with my company. But completely without a visit, we didn't get away, since at the beginning of August, Kathy advised her visit with the two children. I was not particularly happy about this, because I really had no time to give the tour guide. On the other hand, I was looking forward to see Marcus again, and show him there was more to life than the Hamburg ghetto. The announced Saturday Kathy and the children should have arrived. Michael and I went to the airport to pick them up. The plane arrived, but without Kathy and the children. We went home again, empty-handed. I tried to reach her by phone, but without success. Everything seemed a bit odd. I looked at the calendar. Now, if I was mistaken in the date, this was not the case. Chris, Michael, and I puzzled together, but soon Kathy herself dispatched the puzzle as she called us to let us know she had overslept and thus missed the plane. Typical Kathy. And now, I asked, I have to take another flight and pay additionally. We are already at the airport waiting. So we wobbled 4 hours later once more to the airport. Marcus fell happily into my arms and excitedly reported about the first flight of his life. Darrell was very cautious, understandably, because he hardly knew us. At home, however, Chris lured him from his reserve. Chris loved children very much, and if he was well-humored, he sometimes picked up complete strange children in the street, held them in his arms, and joked with them. For the period of their stay, Chris turned into something like a substitute father for Darrell, because Mark hardly even cared about the children anymore. While Kathy regularly slept until noon, Marcus didn't move from my side, and Darrell sat either on Chris' shoulder or on his arm while he prepared breakfast for all of us. In the afternoon, I took the three to the beach. It was the first time the children saw a beach, the sea, and went swimming in the sea. However, after the first 2 days of the visit, I didn't feel very good, since some time yet on my right inner thigh had formed an abscess, which was very painful. Chris tried several times to open it and press the pus out, to no avail. I doctored around with various antibiotics and other drugs. Nothing helped. Now a strong pain in my right shoulder appeared out of nowhere, and was so strong I could hardly move my head and right arm. Kathy, who was eyeing our lives striking enviously, especially the wonderful environment her brother was growing up in, didn't take my pain serious in any way, nor registered how much effort it cost me to take care about her, the children, Michael, my business, and not the least to take care of Max, who was still suffering from his disgusting skin disease. Every day I had to put up the fight with him to make him swallow his medicine. One morning it was so bad I had no strength to stand up. Chris brought me coffee to the bed and came every few minutes, looking anxiously at me. When Kathy got up, Chris told her I was not available this day. She was pretty upset that she had to guard the children herself, and for once not being served from front to back. If I and the children are superfluous here, you only need to say so, then I will fly back home with them, she grumbled at Chris, who came to ask me what had gotten into her. I forced myself up to set Kathy's head straight, and found her packing their things. What is this, Kathy? Can't you understand that I simply feel bad? But this has absolutely nothing to do with you. I showed her the abscess, and described the pain in my shoulder. Thus, I convinced her, and she unpacked again. Secretly, I wondered, why anyway? For the sake of peace, we all went together to the Tivoli Park in Benalmádena, a very nice amusement park, with many rides and shows for children as well as adults. Michael, who had already been here with Cande and Miguel, found the car track especially appealing. Then he almost ended in a dispute with Chris, who wanted to forbid him going alone on the roller coaster. I wanted everything, but not my family stressed up as well, so I gave Michael secretly money for the roller coaster for the sake of peace, even though I wasn't feeling well about it, and promptly had a row with Chris, who seemed to be seriously worried about Michael when he was making his rounds in the roller coaster. The next day, I went with Kathy and the kids to the beach of Torremolinos. After bathing, we strolled with the children along the beach promenade. At one of the many stalls, I spotted a cute beach dress, but decided not to buy it. The more I was struck when Kathy bought the dress and gave it to me as a gift. Until then, she hadn't spent a cent. Eating, shopping, disco, entrance to the Tivoli Park for her and the children, as well as ice cream and drinks, Chris and I paid everything. Presumably, she was pretty tight and had scraped all her money together for both flights, including the missed one. On our return home, Chris was in an extremely bad mood. Later, when we were alone, I learned the reason for it. Chris kept his dirty earned money always hidden somewhere in the closet, and now €1,000 were missing. We didn't need to speculate for long. Before we went to the Tivoli Park, the day before, inevitably, we had to leave Kathy alone in the apartment because Chris had to do something and I had to take care of my customers. Now I knew where the money for the beach dress came from. She had given me as a gift. I talked to her, I suggested diet. Kathy apparently would never change. Well, the money was not earned in an honest way, but Kathy had no right to peer into our things, and certainly not to steal this money, no matter where it came from. No, leave it. It's annoying, but I want to spare you this conversation. Chris held me back. I was nevertheless very sad about her exploiting our hostship this way. When they parted, there were plenty of tears. Daryl, who even called Chris Papa now, wanted absolute no separation and jumped out of his buggy when Kathy had already passed the check-in and came running back into Chris' arms. Marcus was crying, and Kathy had her hands full capturing her children and caught some strange glances of other passengers, which most probably suspected Kathy was kidnapping these children. Somewhere I breathed out in relief for now. I could devote myself again to my business, although I still wasn't any better. On the contrary, I was ready to have the abscess surgically removed. In a hospital in Malaga, a date was agreed. In the morning, I had to appear sober at the hospital. After 3 hours of waiting and watching as the newly operated patients were pushed in the middle of the hallway and into the waiting room where I sat, I felt only a strong urge to have a cup of coffee with a cigarette. In good faith, it would take another several hours. I left the hospital to sit down in the restaurant opposite. After coffee and a cigarette, I went bravely back and waited. Chris came with Kevin to pick me up, but when he saw me sitting still at the same place, he asked in surprise if I was finished already. No, I'm still waiting, I replied innocently. Annoyed, Chris stamped to the reception to straighten that lady there. She, however, clarified to Chris my name had long been called. Since I had been absent, however, now had to wait more. Chris turned to me. Before getting the full blast, I suggested hastily, I feel uncomfortable here anyway. Please let us go home. There were days when the inflammation decreased, and I believed to have overcome it. Shortly after, however, refilled the abscess with pus again, which gave me so much pain I couldn't even sleep. At least the pain in my shoulder was gone after I had taken antibiotics. One night the pain of the abscess was so extreme I got up again and by 2 o'clock in the morning drove alone to hospital in Torremolinos, where I practically begged the doctor on duty to operate me. He, however, declined with the reason that initially the pus had to drain first and the inflammation must retreat. Instead, he gave me loads of antibiotics. I gave up and tried to come to terms with the pain and the situation. About sex, I couldn't even think of anymore, so I moved into the guest room and occupied the bed we had bought for Kathy. Chris returned back to his old habits, came home late at night, and it was clear he cheated on me again. I was indifferent. I no longer asked. For me it was just important Michael was happy, and he was truthful. Shinadu had finally given up after Chris got casually my cell phone in his hand and read an SMS sent by Shinadu. There was a lot of noise about it, but I was able to convince him that nothing was between me and Shinadu. But he was stalking me. Chris took Shinadu to task, and I had my peace definitely. The friendship and complicity, however, between Chris and Shinadu was over. Michael's 12th birthday we celebrated in a bowling center in Malaga. For Michael it was a glorious day, because he got the long-promised PlayStation 2 and was allowed to invite all his friends to come bowling, including his first Spanish girlfriend. In the bowling center awaited us a huge birthday cake. In the evening we all had hamburgers and fries. For us adults, it was just as funny. We all bowled together. Kevin and Liberta accompanied us, and every time Kevin let a ball roll onto the track, he slid immediately after it on his stomach, contributing to general fun. Michael and Miguel now often sat in front of the PlayStation. Chris watched his television program. He had bought a satellite receiver and had installed a satellite dish, while I expanded my customer base. Besides, I settled properly now into the guest room, bought blue silk curtains for the windows, the old wardrobe I painted with blue paint, took the white wicker chair with its color crumbling from the living room and also painted it blue. I bought a carpet with a warm shade of orange, a television, a DVD device with a sound system. The result was just as cozy. I was proud of my little kingdom, where I now spent my few free hours. Chris apparently had at this time hardly any friends or business partners left, and seemed to be doing whatever he did alone. I had no idea who he worked with, if one could call this work. Towards me he kept much closed and barely spoke. Only Blessed came more often again. Apparently he was the only remaining friend of Chris. Although I knew now Blessed dealt in drugs on large scale, I still liked him. However, when he one day came to us with a suitcase full of cocaine and wanted to tuck it in my closet, there was a big row. I don't want to see none of this shit stuff here in the apartment. Get out with it, both of you. In school, Michael had absolutely no problem. It was optimal. Max was now finally healthy again, and baby got company. I had set the idea into my head to breed diamond mandarins. Since I found no other white, I bought a normal cock, but without knowing actually whether baby was a hen. At least it refused to lay eggs, but it was wonderful to observe these two small birds, especially when I opened the cage and let them occasionally fly freely in the apartment. How well Max was trained he showed now. He didn't touch the birds. As often as I could spare time, I went to the beach or still visited Alicia. Now and then I went out with Liberta, but secretly I was missing something. I did feel lonely. Chris had never really loved me. His plan was only to use me for his business. When he realized it didn't work out, he dropped me. I often thought of Collins and also of Tony, my first love. Again, I played with the idea to search, but it startled me every time to pay for something what would dissolve in a bubble. Michael and Chris got along very well. Michael also respected when Chris spoke the final word. The fact that Michael was fine with all the consequences kept me from separating from Chris to begin a new life of my own. Michael's happiness was more important to me than anything else in the world. But this should not be of long duration. On this fated day, we were both taken out of our everyday lives and out of our paradise. The day began like any other. Michael went to school after breakfast, and since I had this day no customer visits scheduled, I took my walk with Max. After I had another coffee on the balcony, poured the flowers, supplied the birds, and went to the beach. Then I went to see Alicia, who invited me for coffee in the garden of the hotel. Back at home, I was preparing a pizza for Michael, then helped him a little with the math homework. Chris had been out since early in the morning, somewhere, without calling, which he normally did in between, until then, but I thought nothing of it. However, it was already quite late when the phone rang. It was Chris, who very low and rushing uttered those two single sentences. "I have been arrested in Fuengirola. Get me a lawyer." The line was dead, and I was shocked, but tried to think straight. But how could I find a lawyer at this time? Perplexed, I called Blessed. He was, however, somewhere along the way, and would take about an hour until he could have come to me. He advised me to call Kevin. This I did, but Kevin was quite reserved and distant when I told him what happened. Kevin had, since he was with Liberta, changed a lot, in a positive way. His wild Afro style changed into a short, decent haircut. He went to school with the goal to become an electrician. Criminal activities, he stayed completely away. This was due to Liberta alone, who kept him under control. Somewhere I envied the two for this. Despite all, as a friend of Chris, he always had remained true, until now. Kevin didn't come. Instead, half an hour later, Liberta stood at my door. I was pretty nervous and told her she currently was no great help for me. Shortly thereafter, an officer of the criminal police came and asked a few questions about friends and family of Chris. Liberta immediately exclaimed, "We have nothing to do with this." I had enough and asked her to leave after the officer had gone. Then finally Blessed appeared and had already a telephone number of a lawyer at hand, whom he called and gave her the assignment to go to Fuengirola immediately. Blessed told me that Chris somehow had managed to call him also, telling him something was hidden in his closet. This something Blessed tried to find now. "You have to expect the police will come and make a house search," Blessed warned me. Startled, I looked at him. This was the kind of thing I had previously only seen on television. Blessed thought he had found the correct suitcase, gave me the advice to remain calm and to know absolutely nothing if the police would come and ask. And how they came. After the lawyer had called me to prepare me, they would also bring Chris with them in handcuffs. I sent Michael, who came upstairs from Miguel at 11 o'clock by return mail, straight back again. This sight I wanted to spare him. 6 police officers fell into our apartment. It was an almost eerie sight as Chris, in their midst, came in with his long black leather coat and handcuffs. Still, it gave me a step to see him like this. I had to face innumerable questions while the other policemen rang our neighbors from their beds who should serve in our place as witnesses in their bathrobes. What shameful situation. Everything was torn out of the cupboards and drawers, dumped on the floor. In short words, the lawyer, who had also come along, explained to me why they had arrested Chris. He had opened an account in a Spanish bank, and the people he cheated deposited directly into his account. After several Americans and Canadians had reported the fraud, the international police was investigating, and finally only had to wait that Chris walked into the trap he had set himself. Chris gave me some puzzled looks, but I couldn't interpret them. When the police searched in his bedroom, examined clothes and luggage, Chris shook his head resignedly. Now I believe to understand. Blessed had taken the wrong suitcase. However, the police found nothing. It was an absurd and degrading situation, as I had never before experienced. At last it seemed to be over, so I thought. But now the police started to examine my PC. I protested, but the lawyer held me back. They have to examine the computer to determine from where Chris had operated. They will almost probably even take it with them. but in a few days you'll have it back if they don't find anything. But she was wrong. I saw my PC never again, nor my expensive mobile phone containing all my customers with names and phone numbers. All these months of work wiped out at one strike. I initially believed the lawyer, though, and didn't know it would become worse. I wouldn't and couldn't let down Chris in this situation. Brought him food I had prepared at home. Coca-Cola, cake. I could see him initially, but only once in the police station. He was suddenly very different. Despite his dark skin color, I saw his face was ashen, and his hands were shaking as he clung to me in farewell. The mighty Chris showed weakness. To Michael, I gently explained what had happened. However, I couldn't quite spare him the shock. His beautiful, ideal world fell apart. He had always believed Chris was having his own business and work in his own company, as I once believed. I had left Michael in this phase. Customers that phoned me on my house phone, I initially consoled. I didn't have any data. Alicia asked me also for my service. I couldn't think of nothing better than the excuse someone had broken into our apartment and stole the PC. I saw she didn't believe me, but I could have never told her the truth. I was just too ashamed. When I finally roused myself to clear up the things of Chris I had just moved on the side before, I found in one of his trouser legs a thick envelope. Opened it, and countless banknotes fell out. I counted them, 25,000 euro. For a moment the thought passed my head. Take the money, take Michael, and disappear before it's too late. I rejected this idea. Hid the money instead in a cavity under the sink. From this money I paid the lawyer a few days later the first fee of 300 euro. She described to me exactly how everything happened and ended with the arrest. The police had already been watching Chris for weeks, and additionally he was filmed by the camera in the bank. The police looked for his accomplice and of course for the missing money. What accomplice? I asked innocently. A young woman had always accompanied him to the bank, as the police suspect she worked together with him. The day of arrest she could escape because she had waited outside the door of the bank. I ought to have known. For Chris, only the women he could exploit in some way were interesting for him. That was why I was neither interesting nor attractive for him. From this moment on, I changed my attitude. I started to draw a definite line because I knew Chris would never change. The lawyer actually succeeded to bring him out of the pre-trial detention. After the first hearing, he was free until trial, but on the condition to present himself on a monthly basis before the court and confirm by signature of his presence. I brought him home, but knew what I still felt for him before I had died. Chris, however, seemed actually to have gotten respect for the law now because he played with the idea to go to school and, like Kevin, to attend a training course. Actually, this would have been the time for a fresh start between us, because Chris was not just ambitious, but also very affectionate towards me. I heard him say the first time, "I love you." But when I asked him about my computer, I received the answer, "I went through hell, and you care only about your fucking computer." Outraged, I shouted at him, "And you don't spend one thought about it, of what we should live. I have earned my money with it." It had never really interested him. "I have money. Of that we can live until I finish school and found a job." I scornfully reproached him. "From your filthy money, should I live? Also, how long do you think you will get along with this money, with your lifestyle?" The fact I had my reserves from the sale of the bar I hid before him. Chris had the bar completely forgotten. End of November, when I still not had my computer back, I buried definitely any hope to resume my work. Instead, I looked myself again for work in newspapers and the internet. Still, there were only few offers, at least not here in southern Spain. However, I noticed there were numerous offers in Gibraltar. Initially, something very different was keeping me to finish this idea. Caesar sent me an email. Next week I will fly to Fortaleza. Will I meet you there? I immediately looked at pictures on the internet of Fortaleza and was fascinated. Flights were also cheap to get. Should the devil take risks? It was crazy, but I booked. Michael had no problem staying 2 weeks along with Chris. Cande and Miguel were nearby, and I knew Cande would keep an eye on him. With Chris, I had a huge crush initially, but eventually he realized he would not dissuade me and promised me to look after Michael. So I packed my suitcase and off I went to the Adventure Brazil.